Over the weekend, the president put out the idea of a 50-year mortgage. And I think it is a combination of the worst of renting and the worst of owning, all rolled up into one. And that is because you are responsible for all the repairs, especially the expensive ones, roofing, the deck, and everything in between. And you still have a monthly payment for 50 years. And also don't forget that that payment can still increase because of insurance and because of taxes. I know this from experience. The payment that I signed up for in 2021 is not the payment that I have in 2025. Imagine doing that for 50 years and not really having a way out, especially if you do it, I don't know, in your 30s and you're not getting out until you're 80, or if you are the average person getting your first home at 40. And not being able to get out until you're 90, assuming you even survive that long. This is not necessarily the best case scenario. What is going on here, and is there a way that we can make this work? Here's how this video is going to shake out. I am going to take all of the possible arguments, all of the ways we can angle this and see how this could work, and is there a positive angle to it? Because I tried. And then I'm going to give you some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to show you two possible ways to either build wealth or try to own a home in this very crazy and expensive environment. All right, so let's first talk about why you would even offer this wild idea. Yes, it does help the banks. We know that. But mainly it's because, yes, it is far too expensive to try and own a home. If you stretch out the payments, you do make things less expensive on a monthly payment basis. Let's break down the math real quick. I'll try and put the numbers on the screen. On a 30-year mortgage, if you were to buy a home, both of these are the same price home. $415,000 was roughly about the median house nationally. I had to argue with a guy from Philly. The prices are very cheap in Philly, apparently. But again, there are a lot of people from coast to coast that watch this. Okay, I can't just talk to people in Philly. Shout out to Philly, though. I do like Philly. In either case, though, median cost of a house is $415,000, roughly about $430,000 if you ask me. But in either case, $415,000. You put down $20,000 for a down payment. 30-year mortgage at 6.22%. You will have paid, by the end of year 30, $734,000. $402,000 would have gone to interest. Your monthly payment will be $2,038. Okay, keep that in mind. $2,038. 30-year mortgage, $402 goes to interest. Right? You would have paid a total of $334,000. Okay, $734,000. All right, that's the regular 30-year mortgage. Now, on the 50-year side, half a century, all the same stuff, $415,000 home, $20,000 down payment. Here's the difference. You only pay $1,802, so $1,800 basically there each month. But over the half century that you're doing this, you will have paid $1.08 million. Over $1 million you would have paid, and the interest would have been $749,000. Almost $750,000 in interest alone. Okay? That by itself is a lot. You are paying more in interest over 50 years than the entire scenario in 30 years. This is the main reason why so many people are upset. But let's see. Let's knock down some arguments. Let's see how people are trying to make this work, and see if we can see the other side, and see if there are some benefits that we can squint and see. Because in finance, I've always said, hey, there are some situations. So first, what about the tax benefit? Right? You get to write off your mortgage interest. Well, there's a word that was missing there. You get to write off a portion of your mortgage interest. You actually don't get to write off the entire thing. I don't think enough people really realize that. So the first part is to even write off your mortgage interest, a portion of your mortgage interest, is the fact that you have to itemize your tax return. Most people do not do this. I repeat, most people do not do this. And that's because the standard deduction, I don't want to get too far into the tax weeds, but it's not worth it for most people to do. So that's number one. Number two is the fact that you only get a percentage of it. For example, in our case for the 700, I'm just gonna round up to 750, but the $750,000 you would have paid in interest for the entire 50 years, if you're in the 24% tax bracket, you only get 24% of that. Therefore, that gives you about $180,000 that you get to write off on your taxes over 50 years. You only get to write off $180,000 roughly. Okay, to be exact, $1,079,760. I know somebody wants to call me out on that. Okay, that's what you get to write off for the entire 50 years. That's it. Okay, to pay almost $750,000 to only write off about 180. That's bad math. That's bad math. I can just pay less interest to begin with over 30 years. You don't pay $1 to save a dime. Okay, so that's one. Throw that one out the window. What about this case? What about the fact that I'm saving about $236 a month? What if I took that and invested that? Wouldn't I make more money that way? Well, let's take a look at that. Remember in the 30-year case, I said that you're paying about $2,038, and then the 50-year case, you're only paying $1,802. The difference between those is the $236. Take the $236, invest it at 7%. That's basically an index fund. When you account for inflation, you normally say that the index fund, or S&P 500 rather, gives you about 10% on average, but because of inflation, we will give you about 7. Okay, roughly 7. Take that, invest it for 30 years. What is that? That turns out to be $4.6 million at the end of 50 years, assuming you even survive. Now that sounds like a deal. That sounds like something that would be worth it. Except that in reality, because you're old, because you would be old, you would not have that money. In reality, you wouldn't have that money. What normally happens is this: if I'm 30 and I'm investing that money, where I'm taking that 236, I'm paying my mortgage, right, and I have that additional 236. Once I'm 65 and I decide to retire, or at whatever age, I'm doing this math at 65, I'm likely either A, going to retire and no longer have my regular income and start withdrawing on my investments, or stop investing entirely. That 234 is no longer going to exist at a certain point. So I did the math and stopped investing at 65. So I invested all the way up into age 65. So stop investing after 25 years. That means I'm only going to have $180,000. Now the money does keep growing. And at age 50, after 50 years, at age 80, I have only $367,000. Now, what I did was keep investing at 7%, but I'm still withdrawing money because I need the money to live. So at the end, I'm still taking out that 4%. That's only going to give me about $15,000 a year. What is that going to be worth in 50 years? I don't know how much that's going to be worth. It's better than nothing. I will say it's better than nothing. But I don't know how far $15,000 is really going to get me at that point in time. It's, again, better than nothing, but it's not the $4 million I thought it was going to be. But really think about logic. You're really not going to be working the same, nice job, cool job, whatever job you have now at 65, 70, 75, unless you're in Congress. So it's not going to be like that. In most cases, you are working a lower job, or you're not continuously putting money in savings. You're using that money to live on. You're not just, hey, I'm continuously investing. No, you're withdrawing that and your money keeps growing. So the $4 billion, highly, highly unlikely you're using that money. So that one is actually off of the table. Okay, that one's gone. What about the fact of just taking the 50-year option and then just paying extra and just shoving as much money towards that interest as possible and getting it done in 30 years. What if we just did that? Well, number one, not every bank is going to allow this. For me, I end up doing, 13 payments. I pay bi-weekly, which means I make 13 payments per calendar year. And because I do that, I end up paying my mortgage off like 2 years or 2.5 years earlier, whatever it is, assuming I even stay in this house for the full 30 years, which we'll see if that's likely or not. In either case, though, by doing that, I save a chunk of change in interest and get done early. Well, what if you did that for a 50-year mortgage? Number one, if you did that, hooray, but you go from 50 years to 45. That's still a lot of time. If you did that and you still shoved everything and paid it in 30, you probably just could have still got a 30 year. You would do by time, or you do by flexibility, but again, do you need 20 extra years of flexibility? That's a lot. I'm not sure if you need that much, because do not forget that when you stretch out the loan and make it 50 years, that interest rate is higher. So while you do buy that flexibility, you are still paying more interest, which is still going to force you to pay even more as you're paying off the interest even quicker. So even that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball and trying to pay it off a bit earlier. So I don't think that would work either. So now that all that is off the table, what are your options to build wealth in this particular environment? Number one, you're not going to like it, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. You can still rent and invest, and that is a choice that you can make. I'm not going to go all deep into it. I've done a whole video about it, but I will tell you this. People who are en route to become millionaires are doing it, and that population is growing. I'm just throwing it out there now, okay? You can go ahead and check the videos and check those articles if you choose. Renting is currently, we'll see if it stays that way, currently cheaper than owning when you account for all the cost. That's one. Let's set that aside though. Let's focus on owning, okay? That was one. Number two, this is from an advisor perspective. From what I've seen, and then we'll talk about what I've done. Early in my career, and the advantage of watching this channel, hitting the subscribe button, this is your chance to do that, is this. I have seen those who bought their houses early. And if you're somebody, especially a millennial, and you're like, how in the world did so-and-so you see on your timeline, they just graduated college, how did they just buy a house? And I haven't bought mine, that was 8 years ago. Or they just graduated in like 2 or 3 years out of college or whatever, out of high school, whatever. They just bought a house. I'm still renting. How does it feel like you are behind? They've already got this stuff established. What normally has happened is either A, they got a gift from their parents, which is not something you can necessarily replicate, but two, they usually stayed with their parents and paid off their loans. Now, I have seen it. When I was helping people, coaching and getting their budgets together, like, yeah, I, stayed with my parents for 2, 3, sometimes 4 years. By doing that, they had zero overhead in terms of rent. Paid off the loans really fast, then continued to save for a house. And their parents were like, hey, look, this is what you're going to do. Or you can live with us for a while. This is how I saw people buy their first homes at 24, 25, 26, 27. That is how it was done. How did God do it? How did me and my wife do it? The pandemic hit. Now, we had money we were saving in general. However, because we had a kid in 2020 and we were moving anyway, we were like, hey, it's a pandemic. Let's just shelter in place with our in-laws because we need help because we just had a new kid. We had 2 kids at that time. Let's just stay here. Everything was shut down. And we just, by default, no student loans, in-laws, and just saved. It wasn't the plan per se to just like save for a house, but it was like we're just collecting, paying off debt, and that was just what the world was at that point in time. And it was like, oh, wait a minute, this actually worked. And that was just the result. I've also seen other people who have like a satellite. We've done this in our family too, more so on my in-law side, where one person goes out, went to North Carolina, then uncle comes out here, stays for 2 years, saves, then he buys a house. Aunt comes out here, saves, and they all came from like Louisiana and Texas and stuff like that, and they all like come out here, stay for a year, buy a house, stay for 2 years, buy a house. I'm like, wait a minute. Why don't we do that? Not just like we culturally, but what I'm saying is in the really from the 1910s to about the 1930s or so, multi-generational living was the standard. I'm not going to go into a whole history lesson. I can do that later. But multi-generational living was the standard. And it wasn't until the World War II era, baby boom era, where everybody had to have their own home, and that's just how it was. Grandma, grandpa, sometimes uncles, grandkids all stayed in one house. It wasn't the standard that everybody had to have their own house all the time, and that became the American dream standard. You could save a lot more just by staying home. And that being, like, I would expect my kids to come back home at this point and stay until, you know, maybe 22, 23, 24. Like, it wasn't cool to do that when I was, you know, trying to get up and leave Oklahoma. But looking back, had I done that, I would have had a lot more money in my pocket at that point in time. But we might want to change our thinking around it. I know it's a bit weird, it's a bit different, but who does that benefit by not having it that way? Banks, people selling houses. No shade to them, though, because I wouldn't have my house without those people, right? But think of things just a bit differently. But that is one way to combat it, is by grouping together, right? By having community and building like that community wealth. Like, I can go into the whole Black Wall Street story as well. Not gonna go there either because I have a whole book about that, which you can still get on Amazon right now. But building community wealth and familial wealth and all that type of stuff, that is what generational wealth is about, is by not just you individually, but together you can do that and come to an agreement together. Now, not everybody has the same family structure, but that is just one way where you can figure that stuff out and build it a bit faster. Because I realized that, hey, wait a minute, me paying my own rent, living in my own apartment, that's going to take me a lot longer to save. Got married, brought down our expenses, double the income. Oh, we saved a lot faster. Got married, brought down expenses. COVID happened. That was a part of it. Had COVID not happened, we'd be in a different scenario. Moved in with, you know, with our in-laws because it was a pandemic, saved a whole lot more. You see what I mean? Like, you might need to change that scenario in some way. So I'm not saying you have to do exactly that, but rearrange those things if possible. Not everybody's going to be able to do it. Not everybody's going to be able to do it, but that is the suggestion. So if you are older and you have kids, maybe be like, hey, maybe come back a year after high school or after college. Let's set up a savings plan and let's see what you can do with $20,000, you know, for a down payment or something, and see where you go, or see what you can do after investing that, as opposed to you about to get an apartment at 18 or 22 or whatever. So it's a bit different. It's a bit weird to some, but I'm telling you, that approach is different and might set you up or your family up for a different approach than this 50-year mortgage plan that's out there. So I know it's a different ending than what I normally do. A little off, I know. But I'm telling you, it's going to lead to something different. Want to know more about the stock market, the economy, and everything else? You want to check out these videos right here.